In 475 BC, a Chinese fish farmer wrote a manual that made starvation completely obsolete. His method produced more protein per square foot than modern cattle ranching ever could. It required zero industrial feed, zero permits. It survived the fall of Rome, the rise of empires, and centuries of brutal war. But today, here in America, you have likely never heard of it. And I promise you, that silence is not an accident. That farmer was Fan Li. His treatise, the Yang Yu Jing, described a biological engine so perfectly elegant and self-sustaining that it makes our modern food system look like a fragile, bloated joke. Think about the American industrial meat machine today. It is a $200 billion behemoth that relies on constant, exhausting life support. It needs mountains of subsidized corn, endless chemical antibiotics, heavy machinery, and massive swaths of depleted, dying dirt. We traded our true generational independence for the sterile convenience of the grocery store aisle. We handed over our God-given right to feed our own families to corporations that view our hunger as nothing more than a recurring revenue stream. We have been conditioned, almost brainwashed, to believe that producing our own food is too complicated, too expensive, or somehow primitive. It is not. It is just hidden from you. Now, listen to me closely. If you are comfortable relying on a fragile supply chain that could literally collapse tomorrow morning, go ahead and scroll away right now. Forget you ever heard this. But if you refuse to be dependent on a system that actively profits off your vulnerability, like this video and subscribe right now. Do not let them erase this knowledge twice. To understand exactly what they hid from you, we have to go back to the very beginning. Transport yourself to the muddy, untamed banks of the Yellow River, right around 3500 BC. The seasonal floodwaters would rise, and when they finally receded, early farmers noticed something miraculous. Fish, specifically carp, were left trapped in the natural low-lying depressions of the land. These people didn't try to conquer nature or invent some complex mechanical filtration system. They just observed. They partnered with what the land already wanted to do. They dug those depressions just a little deeper, reinforced the edges with heavy clay, and let biology do the heavy lifting. This wasn't farming, not yet. This was a quiet, elegant partnership with the earth. For thousands of years, this simple observation kept millions alive. But then, during the Tang dynasty in the 7th century, disaster struck. The ruling emperor's family name was Li. Because the Chinese word for common carp sounded exactly the same, the emperor, out of sheer vanity and superstition, banned the farming and eating of common carp across the entire empire. Imagine that for a second. The primary source of protein for an entire civilization, criminalized overnight by the stroke of an arrogant pen, the peasants were thrust into a devastating crisis. They were staring down the barrel of mass starvation, but instead of laying down and dying, they innovated. Out of pure, gut-wrenching desperation, they engineered the world's first true polyculture. Since they couldn't raise the common carp anymore, they started putting entirely different species of fish into the exact same pond. Think of this polyculture like a massive, self-managing apartment building where every single tenant does a different chore, entirely for free. The mud carp lived down in the basement. They were the janitors, vacuuming up the bottom sediments and keeping the foundation clean. The silver carp lived on the middle floors, acting as living air purifiers, filtering microscopic algae right out of the water column. And the grass carp lived on the penthouse roof, eating the vegetation right at the surface. Every single species had its own specific job. They occupied completely different ecological niches. There was absolutely no competition, and there was zero waste. They accidentally created a stacked, self-regulating ecosystem that was completely unstoppable. Nobody was buying feed. The pond literally fed itself. Now, fast forward to the 1960s, right here in America. The knowledge had been buried for decades, dismissed as nothing more than decorative koi ponds for the rich. But at Auburn University in Alabama, a fisheries scientist named H.S. Swingle started quietly studying these ancient Chinese methods. He built tiny test ponds just 1,000 square feet. That's roughly the size of a modest above-ground swimming pool. He stocked them using those exact ancient polyculture blueprints. The results were absolutely staggering. Those tiny, forgotten puddles produced up to 350 pounds of fish. Let me put that into perspective for you. A quarter acre of highly managed cattle pasture produces about 200 pounds of beef per year, and it demands constant feeding, fencing, and massive veterinary bills. Swingle's tiny ponds produced almost double the protein in a tenth of the space with practically zero inputs. So, why did the momentum stop? Why isn't there a government subsidy for this? Why isn't every agricultural college in the country teaching you how to build one? Because the very second you install a self-sustaining, highly productive pond in your backyard, you completely stop buying meat from the industrial system. A self-feeding family doesn't buy commercial meat, and a $200 billion meat industry simply cannot afford for you to be free. So how does this actually work? The secret is that you aren't building a farm, you're building a living, breathing, four-part biological engine. Once you understand the biology, the ecosystem literally builds itself. Pillar 1. The ducks. These aren't just livestock, they are the managers of your pond. They are the biological motor. When ducks swim, they constantly stir up the bottom sediments, releasing trapped nutrients into the water column. They fertilize the algae. A small flock of just 3 to 5 ducks will give you up to 1,700 eggs a year, and because they are foraging up to 30% of their own diet directly from the bugs and weeds in the pond, your feed costs drop to almost nothing. Pillar 2. The plants. These are the lungs and kidneys of your system. A ring of cattails acts as a heavy-duty biological filter, pulling excess toxins and nitrogen right out of the water. Water lilies provide crucial shade to prevent the water from overheating in the summer sun. And then there's duckweed. Duckweed is a miraculous self-replicating food source that doubles its mass every 48 hours. It costs you absolutely nothing, and the ducks will eat it as fast as it grows. Pillar 3. The fish, the harvesters. You stock bluegill because they require zero maintenance and reproduce completely on their own. You stock channel catfish for incredibly fast, heavy protein. And if your climate allows it, you stock tilapia for insanely rapid growth. Pillar 4. The beneficial bacteria, the invisible workforce. They run the crucial nitrogen cycle, constantly converting fish and duck waste into perfect, natural plant food. They do the heavy lifting while you sleep, balancing the chemistry of the water without a single chemical additive. When you realize that nature already perfected this cycle thousands of years ago, you realize just how much time, sweat, and money you've wasted feeding the industrial machine. If you're watching this and you still haven't subscribed, ask yourself why you're choosing to stay asleep. Every single day you ignore this, you're voting for your own dependence. Hit subscribe, take your sovereignty back. Now, I know exactly what you're thinking right now. You're thinking, how much does this cost? How hard is this to actually build? Let's get real. For a family-scale homestead protein system, your total setup cost is about $400 to $600. Compare that $600 to a single decade of your grocery store meat bills. It is a fraction of the cost. Here is your exact blueprint. Step 1. Dig. Mark out a spot that's 10 by 15 feet and about 4 to 5 feet deep at the center. Do not fight your land. Use the natural contours, find the lowest point where water naturally wants to collect after a rainstorm. Step 2. Seal it. If you have heavy clay soil, you can seal it the traditional way, just by compacting the wet dirt. If you have sandy or rocky soil, just drop in a $200 EPDM rubber pond liner. Step 3. Stage the life. Do not rush this process. Add your water and wait a week. Add your plants and wait a full month. Let the roots take hold. Then add 2 to 5 ducks. Let them wake up the water. Finally, introduce 50 fingerling fish. And here is the hardest part, the ultimate reality check. For the first 6 months, do absolutely nothing. The water is going to look murky and cloudy. Do not panic. Do not run out and buy mechanical filters. You have to let the biology find its balance. You are not a farmer forcing the land to yield. You are a steward watching an ancient ecosystem wake up. But what about the final hurdles? What about winter? If you live up north, where ponds freeze solid, your fish will simply enter a dormant state deep under the ice. A basic $40 pond de-icer will keep a tiny hole open for gas exchange, and that is literally all you need to do. Your ducks are incredibly cold hardy and will survive just fine with a basic 3-sided shelter from the wind. And what about the government? What about the legalities? Here is the best part. In almost every single state, ponds under 1 acre do not require any permits or government approval whatsoever. You are simply collecting rainwater and managing it on your own private property. Close your eyes and picture this. 10 years from now, the fragile supply chains are fracturing again. Your neighbors are panicked, stressing over skyrocketing inflation and fighting over empty grocery store shelves. But you don't panic. You walk out into your backyard. You cast a line into the cool, dark water, you pull out a healthy, heavy fish, you collect a basket of warm eggs, and you feel a quiet, profound sense of absolute calm that no amount of money could ever buy. The blueprint is in your hands. You just need a hole in the ground, water, and the courage to step outside the system. If you leave this video without liking, subscribing, and sharing it with someone who needs to hear it, you are willfully handing your independence back to the people who hid this from you in the first place. The pond is waiting. Will you build it?